welcome. You're watching Medically Speaking. I am Meenakshi Upreti. Monkeypox cases are on the rise. That's something which everyone's talking about. There's a big scare around monkeypox, but what exactly are the symptoms of monkeypox? One of the biggest symptoms being scabs, lesions, and of course, boils, which you see on a patient's body. We'll discuss all of this and more. And for the same, we're being joined by Dr. Kaushal Verma. He's the HOD of the Dermatology Department at the Premier All India Institute of Medical Science. Thank you, sir, for joining us on NewsX. My very first question.
Thank you.
Sir, help us understand the symptoms of monkeypox and the ones which manifest very ostensibly on our skin.
If we understand from the beginning what monkeypox is, it is a viral infection which is caused by orthopox virus family, where you have the viral symptoms which are associated with several other viral infections also. So it starts with fever, body ache, muscle ache, fatigue, and then skin rashes. In this, the skin rashes are very prominently shown, and they can develop, say, with the time when the fever starts, or maybe in the next, say, 2 to 3 or maybe 4 days, soon after the person starts having fever. And the skin rashes are very prominent and very conspicuous in the sense that they would start with red patches on the skin, mostly on the face and hands, the what we call exposed parts of the body. And then quickly over the next few days, they will turn into a sort of what we call papules, and then the vesicles and pustules. These pustules are very large ones. If somebody has seen a patient of chickenpox, pustular lesions, what we call, but in monkeypox, these lesions are much bigger, and they are showing the roundish, well-defined the skin rash, which is filled with the pus, mostly on the face. Then they can occur on the hands and feet, and then the other parts of the body can also get affected. The genitals can get affected. And also it can involve the oral cavity and the genital mucosa. And these lesions take some time to go away. In the next about 2 weeks time, after start the lesion, they start drying up, and then they fall off in the next about another week. So the rash takes about 2 to 4 weeks to subside. And we also need to understand that as long as the rash is there, even if the scab or the crust is there, the person remains infectious. So the people who are around him are the people who are in the vicinity or with whom the person infected is coming in contact with. They need to be protected. They need to protect themselves. And also the person who has got the infection, that also needs to be careful that the scabs should not fall like here and there. They should not come in contact with the healthy people. Otherwise, the virus is going to infect them. And the person should remain isolated till the scabs completely fall off. And after that also, it takes about 2 weeks for the skin to regenerate. So it's important that for people to understand the difference between the monkeypox and the chickenpox, and also to recognize the different kind of symptoms. And it's generally a modest disease. In some people, it can be severe, where you can have the chest infection, or maybe the infection can go to the central nervous system, where they can have complications. But majority of the people require just say antipyretics or the medicines for the control of fever and body ache. They can take rest. They hydrate themselves, and in the over the next 2 to 4 weeks time, it's going to be all right.
Right. You say that in 2 to 4 weeks, a person can recover fully. Till a person has scabs, what are the precautions which one needs to take? You said even when it dries off, is the cautionary period, does it need to extend till they fall off completely? Can you elaborate on that a little more, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. The skin lesions, they have the viral particles, and as long as they remain there, the person remains infectious. The scabs which are there on the skin, those scabs also have viral particles and has the potential of infecting. So the chances of the person who has scab infecting another person is relatively less, but it is not over. It's not that he cannot infect compared to the person who is in the middle of the disease. When the lesions are very active and he has symptoms, obviously the infectivity is high. But when the person is in the scab stage, then also he is infectious. So he should cover up the body they should not fall off, should not come in contact with the other people. So they do not catch the infection. So it's important that the isolation and the protection of the infected person, and then also the protecting the other people who are around it.
Right. And you say that isolation is extremely crucial and important, sir. One more question. Before we have another guest also who's just joined us, and then we'll open it up for a bigger discussion. When we speak of this manifestation of the disease on our skin, scabs, lesions, of course, are the most ostensible ones. But once you rightly said, as they dry off, a person may think that they have recovered completely and they have finished the isolation period and may start mingling and mixing with the common people, with the crowds. How can we protect ourselves from monkeypox? Should we follow the same protocols like in the time of COVID, which is perhaps wearing a mask, washing our hands very often, maintaining social distancing when we step out? Is that enough?
No, in fact, we need to understand there is a little difference between the COVID and the monkeypox infection. The COVID is primarily airborne. So the person, when the droplets are there in the air and the person inhales, they can pick up the infection. Whereas the monkeypox, it can, if the particles which are thrown from the respiratory tract on the other person, maybe on the skin or the mucous membrane, then they will catch the infection. But it's primarily skin-to-skin contact which is more important, which is more critical, which was not so in case of COVID, where it is a, say, aerosol or the airborne kind of infection which used to happen in COVID. So protection and precaution is important. Masking remains a critical, say, measure for protection, and also maintaining, say, personal hygiene and distance. So these are the measures which are necessary for protection against the monkeypox.
Right. And, we're also being joined by Dr. Lokesh Idara. He is of the RP with us. Dr. Idara, thank you for joining us. My very first question to you, sir, we're speaking of, the symptoms and manifestations of the disease. But what's also very, very important, isn't it, sir, is to look at the psyche and the psychological impact of the disease on people. There's a lot of fear psychosis around monkeypox. But if you look at India, the cases are very low. They are only 9 cases which have been reported in India. Yes, there is a case or two reported every day, and that does make national headlines, which unfortunately equals to people hitting the panic button. But what would you like to say, sir, as a specialist today, to those perhaps who are panicking already about monkeypox, thinking that it's going to eventually turn into something like the waves of COVID which we had seen earlier?
Yeah, hi. I'm actually Dr. Ravi Kohli. I'm the president of AAPI, American Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. Thank you for having us.
Apologies, Dr. Idara also had to join us. I think he's going to join us in a bit, and all of you are from AAPI, and hence the confusion.
Right.
So, Dr. Kohli, yes, would you like to take this question, sir?
Yeah, the monkeypox has become a problematic situation in America as well. And 44 states have reported the cases. There are 20,000 cases reported. And World Health Organization also has reported as an emergency. And so there is some concern. And it's mostly spread through the intimate contact, skin contact, and mostly through sexual activity. And so there is some concern. There are a lot of unknowns, but it is very... it's not as easy to be spread out as we might think. So there is some concern, there is some controversy, there is some questions about it, and much needs to be followed up, and so that we can educate the public and not make a panic situation worse again. That's my take right now.
Since you're speaking of a large number of cases in the US, of course, India, as I said, has reported only 9 cases. Whereas if we look at Spain, there are about 3,000 cases and counting each day of monkeypox. That is why there's a lot of concern. Many, of course, there is no scientific study yet, but many saying that there is a possibility that the disease could have mutated as well. Do you think it's a possibility, a mutation of the disease?
Yeah, the most viruses do mutate, and that's not unknown. And so that not a controversial thing. That's a course of them. All viruses try to remain active, and the way to remain active is to mutate. And their survival depends on mutation as well. So that adds to our risk of being infected and spread it. But their mutation is their way of survival. So that's going to be a part and parcel of any viral infections.
Okay. And Dr. Verma, sir, since Dr. Kohli was just telling us how the disease is spread, it's mostly spread by intimate sexual relations. Many earlier were saying that it was men-to-men intimacy, which was one of the biggest reasons for the spread of monkeypox virus. What more do we know about the disease? Using same beddings, the clothing of someone infected, that's also one of the reasons or a way in which the disease can spread, isn't it, sir?
Yeah, that's true. Close skin to skin contact is critical for spread of the disease. Whether it is between the couples or the people who are in the sexual relationship, and the contact with the opposite, closely in contact, say during the time of sexual contact, the possibility of acquiring infection becomes very high. And the people who are into same-sex relationship.
Okay, Dr. Verma, we have some slight, so we're having a slight internet issue with you, Dr. Verma.
Probability, and they often have the multiple partners.
Okay, Dr. Verma, we have a slight internet issue with you. Why don't you fix your internet? And
so,
I'll come back to you.
What
we've taken a point of two of what you've said from what I could understand, and I'll take it back to Dr. Kohli. Meanwhile, we'll try and fix your network issue. Dr. Kohli, Dr. Verma was talking about one, of course, how the disease is spread. Sexual and physical intimacy, using similar clothes or same clothes, used clothes and beddings of the patient. What are the other reasons and ways in which this disease is spread? What more do we know about monkeypox? If you could shed some light on the same, Dr. Kohli.
Yeah, it's basically a skin-to-skin contact, and intimate contact seems to be the way of spreading. So if you are in a relationship, avoiding physical skin-to-skin contact is important. Not kissing is important, and having sexual intercourse is also a risk factor there. So avoiding intimate contact is very important. And so we have to be careful at this time. And of course, any promiscuous behaviors also add to your risk factor, because of the having intimacy with unknown people can obviously will put you at risk. So safe sex or no sex is probably the best way right now to avoid contact and avoid infections.
Right. And Dr. Verma, is it only spread by men-to-men intimacy? Because there was a lot of misconception around that as well. If you could shed some light on the same, sir.
Yeah, I think probably that's not right. Any close skin to skin contact makes, it's any close skin to skin contact is likely to transmit. So whether it is men having sex with men or say the couple having sex, if one is infected, the other person is going to get infected. It's the contact which is more important. And why certain groups are considered to be high risk group? Because of their sexual behavior, like the MSM population, what we call men having sex with men, because they are the close network. And then they also frequently change partners. So that makes them more, prone or more likely to acquire infection. And then there are certain other groups like people who are immunocompromised.
Right. It's actually,
somebody is having a disease where the immune status is compromised, like somebody is having a cancer or somebody is taking treatment for cancer therapy, or somebody is taking immunosuppressive agents for whatever other problem. These are the people who are more likely to acquire infection. So it's just not the same-sex relation, the transmission of infection from one person to another more often.
Yes, and it's very important to mention this as well, because there's a lot of stigma around it as well. And that's why we had seen a few cases being reported late, because there were a few individuals who were perhaps closeted and did not want to reveal their sexual identity. And Dr. Kohli, if you could come in here, sir, since we're speaking of the symptoms, the manifestations, of course, the isolation period as far as monkeypox is also concerned, what is one advice you would like to give people, perhaps who are watching the show? It could be in India or perhaps abroad in the US as well, sir.
Yeah, I think early screening and decontamination and safe distancing as well as all those factors are important. And so, I mean, just like any other sexual transmitted diseases, we have to be careful. How do we address these things? And other sexually transmitted diseases also are a high risk group. If they have it, also more likely they probably can be more at risk as well. So this is a time to be very careful with sexual transmitted diseases, along with monkeypox as well.
Right. Absolutely. Caution, of course. Caution is extremely important. It's paramount, but there is no point, of course, right now of raising the alarm level. There's no need to panic. That's the message coming, of course, from your side. Dr. Verma, initially we only touched upon a subject, which is the difference between monkeypox, chickenpox, smallpox, because when we look at how the disease manifests and shows itself on the skin, there are a lot of similarities for the common man. Help us differentiate and tell us how it's different. And then of course we'll go back to Dr. Kohli and speak on the morbidity or comorbidity aspect of the disease. Dr. Verma, first to you.
Yeah, let's start with the chickenpox, which is common, which we very often see in our clinical setting also, and even the people in the general population, where it starts with fever. Will become the same fluid or pus-filled lesions, and they're usually smaller in size, mostly on the trunk. And 3 weeks for the chickenpox lesions to go. SARS slightly more. It's a relatively more severe disease compared to chickenpox. The rash starts from the exposed sites, face, neck, hands, and then it goes on to the feet, and then it can spread elsewhere on the body. But the concentration of lesions still remains on the face and the arms and hands. And these lesions then progress to, again, from red patches, they will become a little raised patches, and then they will be fluid filled, and eventually they will become pus filled. And they are larger lesions. They are much bigger than what these spots are. The rash in chickenpox will appear. And again, then it takes about 2 to 4 weeks to go, and then the scalp will fall and the skin will come up. Smallpox is much similar disease. It's very debilitating and devastating kind of disease where the symptoms are very profound.
Okay. Right. So you were telling us a little bit about difference between chickenpox and smallpox. We could not reach, on monkeypox. But yes, for the benefit of our viewers, Dr. Verma, of course, there seems to be some network issue on your side. But
the lesions are also very deep. And that can be monkeypox also, which is relatively superficial. Monkeypox scarring is slightly deeper than the chickenpox. And
Okay. There seems to be some network issues, so it's a little difficult to understand you. But I think, yes, as far as monkeypox is concerned, the symptoms we had discussed right in the beginning, lesions, rashes, of course, boils all over the body, but it does start with a fever, and of course, it's less lethal. Of course, smallpox almost eradicated. Dr. Kohli, last word to you since we are closing the show. So we have about 60 seconds remaining to close the show. There is a lot of fear around monkeypox relating the morbidity of the disease. Who is really at risk? Is it the comorbid? Is this the immunocompromised who are at a bigger risk?
Generally, monkeypox is rarely fatal for most people if they have actually vaccinated for chickenpox and smallpox previously. And of course, immune-compromised people will have a little bit more of a high-risk group. So for most people, it's not a fatal disease. So the death rate is pretty low. So it doesn't have to panic people like other more serious illnesses that can be fatal. So first thing we need to, the fatality rate is less than 1% from what I believe.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful not to panic people. And so not many deaths have been reported, even though infections may have been reported. So that's my take.
All right. Of course, rightly said. Of course, the morbidity level is low, so there's no need to panic. But yes, caution always better than cure. Far as monkeypox is concerned, we try to touch upon various aspects from the symptoms really to the manifestations of the disease. We could not really discuss the treatment aspect because anyway, very little is known about it. We will, of course, keep discussing it in further detail and shedding light on it as and when, of course, more and more details emerge. For now, I'd like to thank both Dr. Kohli and Dr. Verma for joining us on the broadcast.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.